Hey, I'm Isabel Bercaw, and when I was 12 years old, I founded a multi-million-dollar bath and body products company called the Bomb Bath. After 5 years of building my own brand, I've discovered a passion for helping young and innovative entrepreneurs tell their stories. Hopefully, you'll be inspired by the guests here on Build-A-Biz and maybe even motivated to start a business of your own. Let's get into it.
This is Build-A-Biz with Isabel Bercaw.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Build-A-Biz. Today we have joining us two very special guests, Max and Harvey, the musicians that are taking the world by storm with their awesome tunes, and also they are pretty entrepreneurial as well. Max and Harvey, thank you so much for coming on my show today.
Hello. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, of course. So I think I kind of want to start with how did you both find your passion for music? Because it seems that you have a lot of balls bouncing around in the air, but music is kind of like your primary thing that you really love.
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting. Max and I used to be massively into musical theatre because our dad has always been a musician, and that's sort of where he used to do a lot of work before he sort of had a family and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, he's always been interested in that, and we just grew up around music. And we used to just like post singing videos over like YouTube and stuff like that. They'd never really get any views. But then we started using the app Musical.ly, and that just sort of changed everything because we were posting loads of covers on there because you didn't have to film like full length covers either. It was like 15 seconds or 30 seconds. And eventually they just started blowing up massively, and we went, right, music's our career. We've always wanted that to be it, but now it really is. So let's just do this.
That's so awesome. And I feel like you must have had to be pretty confident to just get out there on the internet and just sing, because I'm terrified of singing in public or even just somewhere where someone can go back and listen to it over and over and over again. And even if you had like a wonderful voice, I feel like that confidence would have to come from somewhere deep inside. Where do you guys find your confidence? And do you think that you have to be born with confidence, or can you learn it?
So yeah, it's a very good point. Basically riding on what Harvey just said, is that we used to do musical theatre. Our confidence probably would be nowhere near as good if we hadn't have done that, because we both, just before we actually joined social media properly, we did a UK West End tour. So it's like the UK's version of Broadway, of The Sound of Music. Which is quite an interesting sort of show to do. But we basically performed to sort of like crowds of 4,000 to 5,000 every night. And doing that in front of people that don't even know you, and you're working with a team, it really does build your confidence, especially because we were quite young kids. And so, yeah, I think social media didn't really faze us, especially because we couldn't see the people we were performing to. And we've sung all of our life, so we've never really been embarrassed about our singing. Some people don't necessarily like the sound of our voices, but we just sort of have always known that we can sing. It's not the best in the world, obviously, like that's pretty much unreachable to be the best, but yeah, we do pride ourselves in our singing and strive to be better at it every day, basically.
Yeah, and that's really cool, because it almost seems like, you know, you two, you're examples to a lot of people. And the fact that you say that you're still being humble about that, and I personally like the sound of your voice, but it seems like you're acknowledging that there's always room for improvement. And I think that's really cool, because some people will look and see celebrities like both of you and say, oh my gosh, like I want to be perfect like them. And when you come out and acknowledge that, you know, like you also have imperfections that you see in yourself, it's a good model for people who are maybe listening to the show or want to follow you both on Instagram and YouTube and all that good stuff. Yeah, for sure. May I ask, just going back to The Sound of Music really quick, did you two play the same character?
We did, yeah. So we were sort of cast. There was actually 3 teams that went around the country. So it was a bit different. Usually West End is in London, but we did the tour version where we did the whole of like the UK, Ireland, and Scotland. So yeah, we were both Friedrich, which is like the oldest son. Which was a really fun part to play. And it's actually, when you usually do musical theatre, it was still physically challenging, to be fair, because you're singing, and Sound of Music is one of the hardest singing musicals there are. Definitely not hard for dancing. There's literally basically no dancing in Sound of Music, which is good for us because we can't dance. So, but yeah, a lot of musicals are much more challenging in the dance aspect. But yeah, so it was good for us.
You had to get the marching down though, didn't you? When like,
and I'll tell you what, as easy as it was, there were some kids that really couldn't march. We went through like marching lessons. That was the thing. Like during like that was essential, that we learned properly how to march. It was just a bit random, really.
That's so funny. Well, now you have that skill up your belt, so that's good.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll use that again in the future.
Just kind of going back, you guys played the same person in The Sound of Music. You both do everything together, and being identical twins. You know, I see right now that you both, Harvey has pink hair right now, and that's pretty awesome. You both have little bits of like individuality inside of you. So how do you two differ as people, and is that something that you always want, or are you okay with kind of being like in the same profession and being together all the time?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because I'm looking at ourselves right now. Funnily enough, you just pointed that out. And right now, especially, we really do look alike. Like, it's actually kind of scaring me a little bit. But no, I think we've always had the same end goal in life. Like, we've always wanted to be entertainers, regardless of what we're doing. I mean, music comes first, obviously, because that's just what we know the best and what we absolutely love the best. But at the same time, as long as we're entertaining people and sort of having that level of fun that we absolutely love to have whenever we're on stage or presenting or doing anything live and stuff like that, I don't think we'd ever sort of like try and get away from that purely because we're doing the same thing. We're so used to doing the same thing by this point that it'd be weird if I went and did a job now. I don't know, if there was like a brand deal or something and I went and did it and then he wasn't there doing it as well. It'd just be so odd. So yeah, we're really used to it at this point.
Yeah, and Max, how would you say that you and Harvey kind of keep things separate while working together at the same time?
So Harvey and I certainly have our different roles when it actually comes to work. So a lot of people don't really see this. When the content that people see produced is majoritively like both of us sort of looking heavily involved. Like, obviously we are still heavily involved, but when it comes to things like social media, behind the scenes, it's actually, well, it depends. Majoritively Harvey. A lot of the time I take on the YouTube stuff, but then Harvey edits all the YouTube stuff along with our friend Tom. But yeah, Harvey takes on like everything to do with social media, is usually the creative for social media. And then when it comes to like the music side of things, if there's ever a cover or if we're writing music or recording music, I've actually taken it upon myself. I'll show you, but obviously I think it's a podcast, so you won't really see. Made a mini studio in my room with like speakers and all this kind of stuff that I can't really show you at the moment. There's a piano and all this setup, so that we can record the vocals for our music in lockdown. And I acted on that quite quickly, and I feel like a lot of people may have missed out on being able to record whilst locked inside because they didn't sort of think that quickly. I was like, right, I need to get a load of stuff, set up a proper studio. And so, yeah, we take on those different roles, and it does work really well because we can focus on certain things.
Right. That's really cool. And I feel like I kind of see that in my sister and I too. We're 16 months apart, so we're by no means twins, but yeah, we do everything together. You know, we're just a year apart in school. And when she went to Colorado for college, I was just like, what am I going to do all day? Like my best friend is done. So it was kind of sad. But then after a while, I was like, wow, I get 2 closets now. But
that's always an upside. I'll tell you what, if I could take another closet and get rid of Max, I'd do it in an instant.
Oh, no. That's funny. But yeah, we share different responsibilities, and it actually turns out working really well. For example, Caroline really likes doing like behind the scenes stuff, and I would say I'm a little bit more like vocal, and if we have to go to like a trade show or something to sell our bath bombs to different buyers, I'm probably the one who will step up and go and, you know, do the actual like selling with people.
Right. Yeah.
So I feel like that's really important when you have like a group dynamic or even just like a partner duo, to kind of find out like where your strengths and weaknesses balance out the other person's.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So, Max, going back to what you said earlier, you deal a lot with the producing of the music. Harvey, obviously, you're still involved in that. But I kind of want to ask, this can be a question for either person. How did you sort of take the leap from covering different people's songs to then, like figuring out what equipment you needed, figuring out how to produce, record, and like write your own songs? Because that's clearly, very different from videotaping yourself on a phone or maybe like a camera than actually going to like production quality music and really like doing the whole thing yourself. So maybe just like walk me through the process for somebody who has never written, recorded, or sung a song in public.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically the most essential thing, and obviously I'm just before I start, I'm still learning. So we have a lot of help from other people that like help us with the quality of our vocals and the quality of the tracks we use. But a lot of the time I bring the sort of base of what we want to do to the recording session. And I think a lot that has helped me is certainly going to a music college. I've learned how to successfully and properly record through a microphone that is of a very good quality. Like I do actually pride myself. It's a very basic setup, but it's actually very industry standard setup. It's very, very efficient and used by most famous artists. And so, it's basically just taking the time to do your research on the equipment, how it all works, and what is going to be the best for you for your price range, because obviously that comes into it a lot. And I've still, no matter, because Harvey and I aren't like millionaires or anything like that, we're still on a budget, and I just try to figure out what we could get for the right price. And I've sort of basically just made that into actually quite a functioning recording studio from my own bedroom, which is quite surreal to me, actually. It's something I've always wanted to be able to do. And then I just basically throughout college have been learning how to use DAWs, which are like recording softwares like Logic and Ableton. And I'm still learning with Logic, definitely. I want to learn how to properly process vocals, but I'm sort of halfway there on like tracks and stuff. So it's just big learning process, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's super cool too, because I feel like that's some advice that I've heard from other entrepreneurial people before as well. Like before you're going to go into a profession in something, you really should just be checking out every single aspect. Just for example, when I started my bath bomb business, I could have just gone straight to like a co-packer. But my sister and I were actually making the bath bombs ourselves in my basement, which later turned into us having other people help us make them in a warehouse. But I'm so glad that I know what that process is like.
Yeah.
So maybe when you are someday millionaires and have a huge budget, you'll know the process even better because you were willing to put in the work and work in each step of that development process. That's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you've said, we've always sort of like wanted to do everything ourselves, but at the same time having that extra help from sort of bigger people and a bigger team that's sort of grown over the years. And it does take a lot of work. Like you can't just suddenly have a big team or in your case a big warehouse of people just out of nowhere come and help you with whatever it is you're working on. But you just got to work for that really, and eventually you will get there.
Yes, agreed. Okay, so Max and Harvey, we're actually going to take a really quick music break right now. And to everybody listening, while you're listening to the tunes, make sure you go to Instagram really quick and follow Max and Harvey on Instagram. If you just look up Max and Harvey, you will find their account. Welcome back from the music break, everybody. If you're just joining us now, this is Build-A-Biz with Isabel Bercaw, and I am here with Max and Harvey Mills, the musicians and content creators behind the School Days podcast, as well as their brand new single, Worry a Little Less. And I'm here to ask them about their entrepreneurial journey. So, Max, just starting with something that you said a little bit earlier, and this is actually a question for Harvey, but
yes.
So Max mentioned that he kind of deals with a lot of the music stuff behind the scenes, and you deal more so with social media stuff, Harvey. So could you just walk me through a little bit
about, what that entails and talk me through some like behind the scenes secrets and stuff like that?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because there's so many hours that go into that don't even come across people's minds. It's very similar to TV as well, where obviously we were last year we were on the celebrity version of the X Factor in the UK, and again that is a whole week of filming and rehearsing and everything else that goes into 1 hour and a half long show at the end of that week. And it's a very similar concept, but obviously on a slightly smaller scale, because you're producing 30-second videos, or in some cases 10-minute videos or whatever. But there's the filming process, which obviously Max and I both take on together because obviously we're both in the video. But then there's taking all of that footage, putting it into all the different softwares that are used. Some things need subtitling, some things don't, so that can take time as well. And then there's obviously editing it all down so that it's consumable, rather than just having like an hour long or an hour and a half long video just chucked up for no reason. And then, it's just, even with small things like TikToks, a lot of them look like they've just been filmed really quickly, but they've actually had a good half an hour to an hour spent on them, because there's a big difference between just sort of like picking up your phone and filming something and actually that going in with a plan, editing it, captioning it correctly, putting all the different sort of subtitles and all that stuff on it. And all of those things do take time. So once you've got all that nailed, it does get a lot easier, but it does take up a lot of time that people don't end up seeing, because I'm not always posting that I'm editing because I'm editing. So,
Right.
it's like, it's a very different world.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's definitely something that I'm glad that you shared, because a lot of people will just look on social media and think like, oh my gosh, that person is so perfect. And there's almost like a false image. And then they kind of see what you made and they're like, oh, that probably took them like 10 minutes, but really it took you like 10 hours. And I think that's something important that creators like yourselves are sharing more and more with people these days, is that it's not just like a one and done thing. Like you can't just wait. Like I'm sure you've refilmed videos multiple times, just from what we've done with our bath bombs. Like we've had to refilm commercials and stuff before that we put on our Instagram because one little thing went wrong. And that's sort of like there's almost like a false front that's put up on social media. And it's cool to see people like you two kind of breaking down those barriers and saying like, look, like we actually work really hard behind the scenes.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, but it's absolutely worth it for the end result, and we do have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So speaking of hard work, you both just worked very hard on your brand new single, Worry a Little Less. Can you talk to me about some of the hard work that went into that and some of the inspiration behind writing that song?
Yeah, so we actually started writing Worry a Little Less. Sort of, we came up with the concept right before COVID properly hit, and then we sort of changed around the lyrics a little bit, because I'm not sure if it was called Worry a Little Less in the first place. It might have been called something else, but we started changing it a little bit throughout COVID, and we were writing with this guy loads of different songs, and we're still writing now, and we basically wanted to give people a little bit of encouragement and give people a different thought process into what they were directing their worries towards, because obviously there's a global pandemic going on. Life is really tough for a lot of people, and there's some really bad things going on in the world for some people, but there's also sort of smaller things going on in people's minds that they are worrying themselves about. But I think what we're trying to say with the song is that people need to take a step back and realize what the most important things are for them to worry about, and for them to focus on those, and maybe take away the other worried thoughts and replace it with happier thoughts of what is going well at that point in time, or make something go well and do it yourself. Because that's sort of what Harvey and I did throughout COVID. I can't even tell you how horrible it was to, we had sort of probably about 20 different jobs like lined up for 2020, and surprisingly because of 20, but yeah, and basically all of them except from like 2 got cancelled. So that's just a massive sort of loss for us. A lot of people will think like, oh, they're talking about money. We're not talking about money at all. Like money is the least of our worries of what sort of we're getting paid. We want to produce as much content as we can for our fans that they enjoy, and we weren't able to do that because of all these things being cancelled. So it was really hard for us, but we acted quickly. Obviously, I set up my studio so that we could make music. We filmed our TV show from home for 12 weeks. We did 12 episodes of a TV show, and we were basically setting up our podcast throughout COVID to make sure we had something to produce to people when we were able to. And luckily, we've been able to start that. And I think we're about sort of 20 episodes in now of the podcast, which is really exciting for us. And yeah, it's basically the song is just trying to give people a bit of a confidence boost, basically.
Yeah, and I love that. And, you know, we talked about confidence earlier in the interview, and you're sort of just paying it forward a little bit with the confidence that you both have from your past experiences in the entertainment business.
Yeah.
And something else I'd really like to just kind of like enunciate in what you just said, Max, was you sort of talked about how like everything was changing and all of a sudden your creative process was completely just turned upside down and you had to almost like start from scratch. And I feel like that's something that COVID has kind of taught us all not to take for granted. And if there's maybe like one good thing about COVID, it's that we've all become a little more proactive almost in figuring out how, like, if we really want to get something done, we're going to find a different way around that. If you're, you know, trying to think like an innovative person. And, you know, maybe that's like a silver lining to COVID is it really taught us a lesson. It was a hard lesson. And like you said, you lost a lot of projects and that sounds really terrible. But it was cool to see that you were both able to, you know, adjust to what was coming at you at the same time.
No, I completely agree with you, actually. That's sort of a really good message to give to people, because obviously there's no two ways about it. COVID's been terrible, and the amount of lives that have been lost, just it's heartbreaking. But at the end of the day, it has really sort of shown people that you need to focus on ways to be basically innovative and figure out how to do things differently. And it's probably one of the biggest life lessons our generation will ever have, because it's not too common that you get a global pandemic to teach you a lesson. It's sort of
Yeah.
You know, you're not wrong.
It doesn't happen every year.
So, Max, you were sort of talking about how you had to figure out how to make your podcast run smoothly. Harvey, what do you have to say about making that process run smoothly?
That has been one of the biggest things of 2020 that happened to us, mainly because of the amount of time that we were working on it for. We started working on it in about April, I would say, of 2020, maybe even March, I think. And then it obviously took that whole period of time. And then it got to about October, I think, when we actually started properly announcing it and properly starting the process of releasing it to the public. And it's honestly one of the most amazing experiences for us, because already we're literally like 2 or 3 months in, if that, and we have met some of the most insanely cool people. And the best thing about our podcast, in our opinion, I mean, I know we're biased, but I think the best thing about our podcast is that we don't just talk about regular podcast things. We you know, we're called School Days with Max and Harvey, and what we really want to know about is how people's school lives actually grew them into the person they are today, rather than just, you know, the typical interview questions like, oh, what was school like? What was your favorite subject? We do briefly cover those things as well, but we really go into depth about, you know, how people genuinely struggled and how people genuinely overcame those things. And also, you know, what they think was the most important things in their lives that actually, you know, carved them into the person they are today. And also we have a lot of funny segments as well, where Max and I try and solve problems and just basically are just really annoying, but in a funny way, I guess. And we also have this segment that we love called Fickle Fads, which we get the guests that we have on for that episode to tell us what their favorite fad was at the time that they were in school. We've had some really interesting ones so far. We've had, at the top of the leaderboard at the moment, I think, is this one where people used to put like lollipops in their hair. I have absolutely no idea why, but it was great, and that somehow made it to the top of the leaderboard. And then all the way at the bottom, I think, I can't remember, it's something like Pandora rings, but they might not have that in the US actually. But we also had like loom bands and what was another one, Max?
marbles.
Marbles. Yeah, that was a really riveting one. That one that was really exciting to talk about. But yeah, there's loads of fun stuff that goes on there, and we absolutely love filming it.
Yeah, I know that when I was in school, like the silly bands or like the loom bands that you were talking about were huge. Like if you found one of them on the ground, you were like the king of the playground for the rest of the day. Because you like found one on the ground. It was like kind of gross but cool at the same time. Yeah, and it's something that I think more people need to talk about too, is that like everybody's education is different for them. And like Max, you mentioned earlier that you're having a great time learning all sorts of like technical things about how like the music industry, and like the production industry works behind the scenes. And then Harvey, you bring up an important point that like everyone has like black and white experiences, like day and night, completely different from each other. You know, like for example, me in school, like I really wasn't there. Like I did half days, and most of what I know, I just learned from my own business experience.
Yeah.
But there's some people who like are just amazing at what they do, and they credit it to like a certain person, like a certain teacher. And I think that's something really cool that especially younger kids could listen to and maybe learn a little something and almost like prepare themselves for a future in their education.
Yeah, we do talk a lot about troubling subjects right now, like obviously, dealing with racial abuse and things like, dealing with your sexuality and all those important topics. And we obviously make sure that if Max and I don't know enough about the topic, we have someone on that can talk in further detail so that not only the viewers can learn something, but Max and I actually learn something as well. And I think that's one of the other incredible things that we take away from it, is that we absolutely learn at least one or two things every single episode, which is just so cool.
That's so cool. So you have your School Days podcast. You've been in the production industry for a long time. What is something that you're both really excited for in the future?
Well, we have got a tour coming up in the UK that we're extremely excited for. Obviously quite nervous for multiple reasons because COVID is still looming. So it was quite sort of risky of us, but we are hoping by that time that everyone in the UK will be vaccinated. And we'll be able to attend the shows. And if not, it's no major deal because there's nothing stopping us from pushing those dates to another date, which obviously it is a tough thing to do, but I think people will understand because at the end of the day, it's a global pandemic and there's not much we can do. But yeah, we're really excited and we're planning some big things. Obviously, the main thing being new music. But then we're sort of trying to enhance the experience as much as we can and bring in a new element that we won't talk about too much because we don't know if it's going to happen yet, but we're hoping to do something that we've never actually done before. And yeah, it should be quite cool.
I mean, I would expect nothing less from entrepreneurs like you two to just have a crazy twist. And honestly, going to a concert for Max and Harvey sounds like the perfect way to celebrate the end of a pandemic. So
if that's people's ideal of ending a pandemic, then I will take it with open arms. Come and see us.
Yes, one can only hope for the best. So, Max and Harvey, unfortunately, this is all the time that we have left today. And before I let you go, just a little reminder, make sure you check out Build-A-Biz Radio on Instagram, as well as Isabel.Bercaw, because both accounts will be posting updates on the show. And you can also find past shows on the Build-A-Biz Radio YouTube channel. Thanks. Bye.